There comes a time when the very atmosphere shifts when you walk into the room, not because you've threatened anyone, but because your presence carries weight. That weight is not arrogance, it's authority. You don't have to raise your voice, you don't have to boast, you don't even have to retaliate. Your discipline does the talking. Your silence speaks volumes, and the truth is, your enemies are already afraid. True power doesn't come from domination or manipulation. It doesn't rise from chaos, nor does it thrive on noise or disorder. Instead, real, lasting power is born from alignment. Alignment with a higher calling, moral integrity, and spiritual clarity. When someone is rooted in divine purpose, their strength is not just felt, it is undeniable. That kind of power transcends personality, title, or position. It's not about being feared for destruction. It's about being respected for the unwavering standard you represent. A person who is divinely aligned has a confidence that can't be shaken. It's not loud or aggressive. It's quiet, steady, and immovable. That inner authority doesn't require validation, applause, or external recognition. Why? Because the source of their power is internal, not circumstantial. When you are walking in divine alignment, you begin to embody something that makes others pause. Your presence challenges the status quo without speaking a word. You begin to live in a way that reflects purpose over performance, depth over popularity, and impact over attention. This is what intimidates your enemies, not the image you portray, but the depth of your spirit. It's not your words that shake them. It's your consistency, your values, your refusal to compromise. People can fake charisma, but they can't fake character. When you live with intention, integrity, and discipline, you become powerful in ways that the world cannot manufacture. Divine alignment gives you access to strength in silence, clarity in chaos, and boldness in restraint. Those who oppose you aren't always attacking your behavior. Sometimes, what they really fear is the reflection of what they aren't. Your alignment exposes their dysfunction. Your purpose convicts their passivity. Your growth reminds them of the stagnation they've chosen. People who aren't committed to truth will always feel uncomfortable around those who are. But it's not your job to shrink. It's your responsibility to stay grounded. This is why staying aligned is essential. Divine alignment doesn't make life easier, but it does make you unshakable. When your strength comes from above, no amount of pressure below can move you. That's why your enemies fear you. They don't understand how you remain calm under fire, how you stay kind while being mistreated, or how you remain focused when distractions are thrown your way. It's because your power is not self-made, it's spirit-led. People who are not in alignment are constantly searching for ways to gain control. Control over outcomes, people, narratives, and even over their image. They operate in insecurity because their foundation is unstable. But when you're in alignment, you're not easily threatened. You don't need to win every argument. You don't need to prove your worth. You're not in a race for approval. Your confidence comes from the quiet assurance that you're exactly where you're meant to be, doing exactly what you were called to do. This kind of alignment creates fear in those who rely on confusion to survive. Manipulative people hate when you become too clear, too discerning, too focused. That's because they know they can no longer use fear, guilt, or distraction to steer you off course. People who operate in shadows will always fear those who walk in light. And light isn't something you have to force. When you're aligned, it radiates naturally. It confronts lies, exposes darkness, and challenges every environment it enters. Divine alignment also brings divine protection. When your power is rooted in purpose, you begin to see life differently. You no longer chase opportunities, you attract them. You don't beg for peace, you carry it. You stop looking for validation. You already have divine affirmation. And most of all, you don't respond to every threat, insult, or scheme. Why? Because when God is the source of your strength, man cannot be the source of your fear. Your enemies will always try to figure you out, but they won't be able to. You don't operate on their frequency, you're not reactive, you're intentional, you don't act out of emotion, you move with wisdom, you're not driven by revenge, you're sustained by vision. That's what makes you a threat. Not your anger, but your peace. Not your noise, but your stillness. Not your ego, but your surrender. Power rooted in divine alignment is not something you chase. It's something you become. And once you embody it, no one can handle you, not because you've become monstrous, but because you've become immovable. That's the kind of power your enemies fear the most. When people fear you, their fear often has less to do with what you've done and more to do with what you represent. Influence has a way of disturbing environments where control, manipulation, or complacency have been the norm. Your mere presence, rooted in conviction and clarity, can unsettle those who have built their confidence on confusion. It is important to understand that fear is not always evidence that you're in conflict. Sometimes it's proof that you're creating impact. Influence is rarely comfortable. When someone stands firmly in their identity, purpose, and values, it creates resistance, not because they're trying to cause trouble, but because they reveal what others are avoiding. This is why the most powerful people in any room are often misunderstood. Their peace is mistaken for pride. Their decisiveness is labeled as arrogance. Their refusal to compromise is misinterpreted as rebellion. But none of this is rooted in opposition. It is rooted in clarity. When you are clear on who you are, what you're called to do, and where you're going, people who lack that same clarity will naturally feel tension. That tension is not because you've done something wrong. It's because your influence disrupts their illusion of control. You become difficult to manipulate, hard to deceive, and impossible to box in. And that is what makes people afraid. Not your actions, but your autonomy. Control-based systems, whether in personal relationships, workplaces, or institutions, rely on predictability. They function best when people stay quiet, compliant, and insecure. But when someone breaks out of that mold, choosing integrity over compromise and truth over popularity, they threaten the entire structure. You become a mirror that reflects everything others don't want to confront within themselves. Your influence doesn't just change conversations. It changes culture. This is especially evident when you no longer need permission to be powerful. People who are used to gatekeeping will find your freedom offensive. People who are used to manipulation will find your boundaries irritating. People who are used to being in control will find your discernment threatening, and when that happens, they will begin to fear you, not for what you do, but for who you've become. In these moments, it's easy to internalize the resistance. You may be tempted to shrink, to question yourself, or to wonder if you're doing something wrong. But remember this: resistance is often the reaction to rising. When people can no longer dismiss you, distract you, or derail you, they will try to diminish you through fear. But fear is not always a weapon. Sometimes it's a confession. It's the subconscious admission that you are no longer controllable. It's also crucial to distinguish between rebellion and revelation. Rebellion is rooted in ego, but revelation is grounded in vision. When you begin to operate from a place of revelation, living by values that are aligned with truth and driven by purpose, you're no longer bound by the opinions of others. You no longer make decisions based on emotional approval. You move differently, not to be difficult, but because you are being led by something deeper than human affirmation. As you grow in influence, you will notice that those who used to cheer for you may become silent. Those who once supported you may begin to distance themselves. Don't mistake this shift as failure. It's actually a filter. Influence often reveals the motives of those around you. When your growth no longer benefits their comfort, your presence becomes a problem. But that doesn't make you the problem. It simply means you've evolved beyond the limits they placed on you. Real influence isn't measured by how many people agree with you. It's measured by how deeply you affect the environment, even in silence. If people are talking about you, watching you, or trying to figure you out, understand that it's not because you're causing division. It's because your very existence is challenging systems they thought would never be exposed. And that kind of influence cannot be stopped. It can only be feared. There is no need to explain yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. Influence doesn't require explanation. It requires presence. And when your presence carries clarity, purpose, and inner alignment, you become unstoppable. Not because you overpowered anyone, but because you no longer need to prove anything. The fear others feel is not your burden to carry. It's their own internal recognition that you are not the same. You've outgrown the box they built for you. You've elevated beyond the roles they assigned to you. And in doing so, you've revealed a truth they're not ready to face. That power rooted in authenticity will always outlast power rooted in control. Many people are exhausted not because they're weak, but because they're still fighting battles that have already been won in the unseen realm. When you truly understand spiritual victory, you stop wasting energy trying to prove points, win arguments, or defend yourself against every accusation. You begin to realize that not every battle requires your reaction. Not every conflict needs your presence. When you've already settled something spiritually, through wisdom, prayer, or clarity, you no longer need to engage emotionally. That's not weakness, that's maturity. Spiritual victory often looks like silence in the face of provocation. It looks like walking away from petty attacks, refusing to take the bait, and not allowing your peace to be disturbed by opinions that don't align with truth. This doesn't mean you're avoiding conflict. It means you've already resolved the matter internally. You've seen the game being played, discerned the motive behind the moment, and chosen not to participate. That's what makes you untouchable. Not your lack of opposition, but your refusal to lower your standards to meet it. Fighting a battle that's already been won is a distraction. It pulls you away from your assignment and into unnecessary warfare. Your energy is finite. When you invest it in trying to win people over who are committed to misunderstanding you, or prove yourself to critics who never supported you, you begin to lose the very power that made you distinct in the first place. But when you trust that what's done spiritually is stronger than what's said publicly, you regain your focus and protect your peace. Discernment teaches you the difference between battles that are strategic and those that are just noise. Not everything that demands your attention deserves your response. Some battles are bait. They are designed to provoke, destabilize, and shift your focus. And when you take the bait, you empower the very forces you were meant to rise above. But when you walk in the awareness that the battle is not yours, but already settled, you remain centered. You remain powerful. You remain above it. People will often mistake your silence for weakness. But in reality, silence is often the evidence of settled confidence. It's the recognition that you don't need to prove anything to people who were never meant to be part of your future. Your value doesn't fluctuate based on other people's opinions. When you've already won the battle internally, emotionally, spiritually, and mentally, then outward chaos loses its grip on you. This is the root of being untouchable. The world teaches retaliation. Wisdom teaches restraint. When you've already achieved victory in the unseen realm, you no longer need revenge to validate you. You realize that vindication doesn't come through fighting. It comes through fruit. The results of your discipline, growth, and integrity speak louder than any defense you could raise. And when those results start to manifest, the very people who tried to bring you down are forced to watch you rise. Becoming untouchable is not about becoming emotionless or distant. It's about becoming rooted. When you are rooted in purpose, grounded in clarity, and guided by higher principles, you don't get thrown off track by every storm that appears. You don't react to every word that's said. You don't engage every time your name is mentioned. You learn to observe without absorbing. You protect your peace like it's sacred, because it is. People who live in reaction mode are constantly exhausted. Their lives are dictated by the emotions and decisions of others. But people who live in spiritual victory understand the value of stillness. Stillness is not passivity. It's strength under control. It's having the power to strike, but choosing not to because the battle has already been resolved at a higher level. You've already handed it over. You've already discerned the outcome. So, Why return to a war zone that's already been dismantled? When you move in spiritual awareness, your posture changes. You're no longer easily provoked. You don't entertain foolishness. You don't lower your frequency to match dysfunction. Instead, you guard your energy, protect your vision, and remain aligned with your purpose. That's where your power lies, in your ability to choose what's worth your attention and what's beneath your calling. Becoming untouchable doesn't mean people won't come against you. It means their attacks no longer hold power. It means your peace is no longer up for negotiation. It means you've graduated from needing to win every battle to understanding that some victories are invisible, but eternal. When growth begins to manifest in your life, emotionally, spiritually, or even professionally, so does resistance. People often believe that opposition is a sign of failure or misalignment, but more often than not, it's a confirmation that you're on the right path. As you rise in wisdom, clarity, discipline, and purpose, people who were once comfortable with your former version start to feel unsettled. Not because you've done something wrong, but because your evolution confronts their stagnation. Progress has a way of exposing hidden agendas. When people start to scatter from your life, it's rarely random. Some relationships were built on your dysfunction, your silence, your people-pleasing tendencies. When you heal, those dynamics shift. When you develop boundaries, when you stop seeking approval, when you prioritize growth over comfort, it disrupts patterns that others depended on to feel in control. Your rising becomes a threat, not to your character, but to their control. Slander often begins when presence can no longer be possessed. When people can't control your decisions, they will try to control the narrative about you. They'll twist facts, exaggerate flaws, or invent stories, not because of what you've done, but because they can no longer access the version of you that served their convenience. But slander is not always a sign you need to defend yourself. It's often a sign that your voice, your progress, or your peace is revealing something others want to hide. As you ascend in clarity, peace, and purpose, expect the chaos around you to increase. Rising disrupts dysfunction. Growth unsettles comfort zones, and when you no longer operate at the level of confusion or codependency, others may interpret your elevation as arrogance, coldness, or rebellion. But don't let that distract you. That noise is not your cue to step down, it's confirmation that you've stepped up. People who are used to your old patterns, especially patterns of self-sacrifice, people-pleasing, or silence, will often respond with chaos when those patterns no longer work. They'll stir drama, create tension, or attempt to make you feel guilty for changing. But the truth is, your growth isn't the problem. Their comfort with your former limitations is. Your boundaries reveal their expectations. Your rising reveals their entitlement. Your focus reveals their distractions. It's easy to assume that when conflict arises, you must be out of alignment. But conflict can also be a sign of shedding, the weight of old relationships, roles, or environments that no longer support your transformation begins to fall away. Scattering is part of the refining process. Everyone can't go with you, not because they're bad people, but because their presence would conflict with your new direction. Elevation often demands separation. In times of transition, God often allows discomfort as a signal to shift. The slander isn't there to destroy you. It's there to detach you from needing public approval. The scattering isn't meant to make you lonely. It's designed to create room for what's next. The chaos isn't proof of disorder. It's the enemy's last attempt to pull you back into old cycles. Your job is not to engage every conflict, but to stay aligned with where you're going. When people start talking, let them talk. When people walk away, let them go. When the noise rises, stay grounded. Rising is not just about elevation in title or position. It's about elevation in mindset, behavior, and perspective. And the higher you go, the thinner the air becomes. Not everyone is equipped for altitude. Some people need the oxygen of gossip, control, or codependency to survive. But when you're called higher, you have to breathe differently. You have to think differently. You have to relate differently. You are not being attacked because you are off track. You are being targeted because you're stepping into clarity. You're no longer begging for belonging. You're no longer molding yourself to stay acceptable. You're no longer shrinking to stay loved. And that threatens systems built on insecurity, fear, and manipulation. The chaos is not your downfall, it's your catalyst. It's a sign that your light has become too bright to ignore and too stable to manipulate. Rising doesn't always feel rewarding in the moment. It can be lonely, painful, and misunderstood. But don't confuse the discomfort of growth with the pain of being wrong. You're not falling apart. You're being set apart. Let the noise come. Let the scattering happen. Let the slander pass, because your focus isn't on proving your worth. It's on protecting your purpose.